What's up, guys? It's Christian here, and I'll be telling you what my predictions are for the Liverpool Premier League season, as well as the Liverpool campaign in the Champions League as well. As you remember, last season, Champions League, we got to the final, and we finished 4th in the Premier League. If you combine those two together, I think that's a pretty good season in my opinion. Considering that we were predicted to not do anything like that in the Champions League, we probably predicted to go out round of 16, maybe the quarterfinal if we were lucky. But we got past Porto, we got past City, we got past Roma, and thanks to Sergio Ramos, we didn't even win the Champions League either. So, but either way, that's a good season anyway, in my opinion. Some of these players that are coming back are going to have to be the important players if we want to maybe win the Champions League, maybe win the Premier League. They're going to have to be the more important players along with some of the new signings we brought in, and I'll get into those. So the most notable players that are going to have a very good impact on the season are Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, and Roberto Firmino. All 26-year-olds who lead the line up front and score tons of goals. Tons of goals. Mohamed Salah, 32 in the Prem. Sadio Mane, 10 in the Prem. And Roberto Firmino, 15 in the Prem. As well as they had 30 goals combined in the Champions League. That's more than any other team had as a whole. And that's 3 players on one team. Like honestly, that's crazy. That's just showing how good of an attack we have and the great system that we play under Jurgen Klopp, another great manager. Come on. Who hates Jurgen Klopp? Come on. Honestly, if these guys can score at the level they did last year as a combination of all 3, I don't understand. If we score the same amount of goals we did, and with the better defense we have now, like, come on, we can't be much better than that if we give up less goals and score the same amount. Mohamed Salah, will he score that many goals again? Probably not. But just because he's going to get more chances with the likes of Naby Keita, Fabinho, and better center mids in the midfield, and the pressure won't be as much on him because he won't have to create as much. Along with Sadio Mane will probably score more than 10 goals in the Premier League. Like, that's an off year for him. He should be scoring, will be scoring probably 20 plus in the Prem, hopefully. Roberto Firmino, same thing. If he can put up 15 to 18 again, like, that's crazy. Just the front three players out of a starting 11. That's just enough for us to get deep into the Premier League season and probably climbing up the table either second or first with City. Like, that's crazy. Also, they scored a lot in the Champions League as well. 30 goals between the 3 of them. If they can lead the line in the Champions League as well and in other competitions, like, thank you. We're going to be good, obviously. I think we'll get deep into the Champions League if they score at the rate they did last year, along with other guys in the midfield and other guys coming off the bench like Shaqiri, Solanke, Sturridge, Origi, all those guys. If they come off the bench and score as well, that's just perfect add-ons that would be in the ideal situation. So one of the signings I just talked about was Xherdan Shaqiri. He did decent work up front for Stoke City, who didn't give him a lot of help. 8 goals and 7 assists in 36 Premier League appearances. I mean, that doesn't look good on paper, but in reality, if you look at the team he had around him and how much help he had, and considering he was by far the best player on that team, there's not much you could say. He did everything he could, and they got relegated. That's just showing you how bad of a team he had around him. And once again, great business by Liverpool, getting him for very cheap, 13 mil, I believe. That's perfect. And considering the depth we didn't have for Mohamed Salah and Roberto Firmino and Sadio Mane last year, he just helps us so much more because he can come off the bench or start a game or two, or he'll help for depth in the FA Cup or the Champions League as well. Like, that's perfect for us. We needed depth. That's something that City did last year, which shows why they won the Premier League by 19 points. And we're trying to implement that now versus teams like Tottenham who haven't really signed anybody, and they're not getting more depth, which is why I believe that we will finish higher than them. Another 2 great signings we had this year, which was perfect for us. Naby Keita from RB Leipzig and Fabinho a great center defensive mid from AS Monaco. I can't stop talking about these two guys. They are perfect for our system. Obviously, you were talking about Jordan Henderson, James Milner, Wijnaldum, Oxlade-Chamberlain. Like, all those guys were good Premier League players, but they're not at the talent of Keita and Fabinho. And guys like Shaqiri, they're not at the same talent, which just makes us more in-depth. And we're going to be so much better than we were last year just because of the added pieces we got. Naby Keita is a person that can be very versatile. He's played right mid, left mid, center attacking mid, box-to-box center mid. Like, he can play anywhere. And Fabinho, he's basically just an upgrade of Jordan Henderson, which is perfect because Jordan Henderson has done a pretty good job since he's become the captain of Liverpool. He's going to be a guy who scores some goals, same as Naby Keita, but they're not going to be looked to score. They're going to be looked to get assists, stop guys from attackers like Leroy Sané and the guys that are killing us in the Premier League, like Harry Kane and guys like that. They're going to help the defense and sit back because that's what Fabinho will do. Naby Keita will be more the guy who just plays the balls through and just creates for everybody, maybe scores some goals, but we're looking for the front three to score, and if the front three will score, there's going to have to be good passes, good through balls, good passes into them for them to score. So another guy we just talked about was James Milner, who actually played left back recently for us a couple of years ago, and nobody thought he would do that, and he had a lot of goals, but those were penalties, so we don't have to tell anybody about that. He's obviously 32, so he's getting up in age, but he's still pretty decent. Gets a lot of assists. He had actually 8 assists in the Champions League last year, which is, it was either the most or one of the most. Like, I don't think anybody else had more than 8. And I think along with him, Adam Lallana, Jordan Henderson, Wijnaldum, those are going to be the guys that rotate that third midfield position now that Oxlade-Chamberlain's going to be unfortunately out for the season, which in my opinion is a big blow because he's like a different archetype, I guess, for the midfield. He plays a lot different. He can play other positions too, but I just think if you were telling me, I would want him to start over these guys personally, but obviously that's a big blow, and I think that will hurt us, but I think that the guys we have, and you combine all 4 of those together, that just equals up to Oxlade-Chamberlain and even more. So now I'm going to talk about the defense. Andrew Robertson had a great year last year. Trent Alexander-Arnold, fantastic. Virgil van Dijk, when he came midway through the season, fantastic. And the one problem that everyone thinks about is Dejan Lovren, or the other center back, which would either be Joel Matip, Klavan. They are considered the weakness of this team and why many people will not pick them to win the Premier League over Man City. Yes, I do agree that Lovren is probably the biggest weakness, but I don't see why people create this whole crap about him being so bad and he's the reason why we won't win the Premier League. But I don't see it. I think he is our weakness, as if you want to go by our worst player, but I don't think he's as bad as people make him seem, just because maybe Edin Dzeko scored a couple goals on them in the Champions League semifinal, or like Croatia lost in the World Cup. Like, some of these things are just blames, just like, for example, Loris Karius. He gets a lot of stick for stuff, but he got a concussion in the Champions League final, and he had 2 mistakes. They aren't excusable, correct, but you can't blame everything because he got hit in the head or he struggled once. He shouldn't get a lot of stick, just like Lovren shouldn't get a lot of stick either. So yes, our defense is probably the biggest weakness, but I think if we can hold it up for a full season with guys like Joe Gomez and Nathaniel Klein as well, like, these guys can help mold the defense that's good enough to win a title either in Europe or in the English Premier League. And probably the biggest and most important signing is goalkeeper Alisson from AS Roma. He's a 25-year-old, and if you remember, he basically kept AS Roma into a respectable aggregate goal scoring against us. I mean, obviously we killed them. I believe we scored 7 goals in 2 legs, but he kept it respectable. He had 109 saves in the Serie A, and he had 46 saves in the Champions League, and they got all the way to the semifinal. So he's saving shots, and I think I saw a stat that he saves the most dangerous shots in the Serie A or all of Europe last season. So he's a very, very good goalie. Obviously, there's only one really good year, and that's why he probably got the #1 job for Brazil in the World Cup. But if you remember, Szczesny from Roma, who was formerly from Arsenal, started over him. So, like, when you're talking about Szczesny and Alisson, like, that's not a good comparison. But in my opinion, he's better than Karius, who's still not a bad keeper, who will help us in the FA Cup and other competitions where he can give us spot starts or against the bad teams in the Prem. But honestly, Alisson is such a big and important signing that we needed it if we want to challenge City this year. Other key players include Daniel Sturridge, who's injury prone, but I believe can be a big, like, super sub in various games. Origi can do the same thing. Solanke, who only scored 1 goal in the Prem, can do the same thing. And then we have guys like Lallana, Gomez, Klein, all these guys that are somewhat injury prone, but if they can be a good, decent, in-depth bench, we can show that we can win games. If you guys remember last season, probably the reason why we finished 4th versus like 2nd or 3rd, and the differential between United in 2nd and us in 4th was only 6 points. And if you remember, most of the games we gave up points were either against bad teams where we just didn't score, or teams like Swans where we lost 1-0. I believe that was right around when we got Virgil van Dijk. Those are just losses we can't have this year. And I believe that if we have the depth and the squad depth for other cups as well, we should not lose those games or draw those games. We start up against West Ham at home, I believe, and I think we should win that game. And it should just start off a good year, because we did only draw the first game last season against Watford, and there was the controversial goal by the center back on a corner. But if we start off the year well and we keep it going, we should hopefully get out of our group easily in the Champions League, and we should win our group easily. We should hopefully challenge City and maybe win an FA Cup, other cups, like those are on the side. But honestly, the goal should be Champions League final again and win the Premier League. Those are 2 goals that Liverpool should have no matter what. If you can get to the Champions League final, you should be able to win it. That's the bottom line. Obviously, we lost it. It was disappointing, but we need to make a Champions League final and or win the Premier League this year. That's what I believe our goal should be. We should be at a high standard because of the quality of our players. And I believe if our offense and our attack can score as many goals or near the amount of the goals they scored last year, and our defense can shore themselves up, the ceiling is so high for Liverpool, I don't even know what could happen. But in my opinion, if Liverpool scores the amount of goals they scored last year or close to that and shore up the games that they should win, Liverpool FC are winning the Premier League. I know that's biased from a Liverpool fan who wears Liverpool short proud, but that's just my opinion. And I believe we can upset some teams again in the Champions League and maybe win the Champions League. So this is going to be a bold prediction for me, but in my opinion, the 2018-2019 is going to be Premier League champions in Liverpool. We're winning the Premier League. You heard it from me. Come back to this video when I prove to you that Liverpool actually will win the Premier League. It's a bold prediction, I know, but I believe Liverpool FC will win the 2018-2019 Premier League championship because of the attack and the shored-up defense that we have. Now, obviously, a lot of people will disagree with this because they believe City will win the Premier League, which is a viable reason, a viable choice. But I just believe in my own club that we will win the Premier League. Now, tell me what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and just let me know what you think about this, because it's a very, very, very interesting topic.